The night wrapped the Riad in a suffocating stillness, like a heavy cloak soaked in heat and secret memories, and Samira stood frozen at the window, her heart pounding so loud she was sure the walls could hear it. Behind her, Kato's silhouette filled the doorway, wings flickering faintly behind him as though longing to remember their shape, his eyes glowing with ancient embers that seemed older than time itself. "Samira," he said in a voice as calm and unyielding as a desert wind that never bends, "the dunes are shifting, we must go now. The desert calls." His tone carried no panic, only the weight of inevitability, as though the world outside the Riad had already begun its movement without waiting for permission. She swallowed, her throat dry. I'm not ready." The words came out trembling, but even as she said them she knew they were meaningless. "You were ready the moment you said yes to me," he replied quietly. Her chest tightened. Each syllable sounded like a final shutter closing inside her soul. She turned away, stepped back, trying to steady herself, but the air around her seemed charged, alive. When she looked again, his wings had folded back into human form, but she could still sense their weight, hollow and expectant, folded between the worlds. He turned towards the courtyard and motioned with a slow yet certain gesture, and despite every instinct screaming for her to stay, to lock the doors, to hide, she moved, nearly stumbling as she slipped on her sandals, fingers trembling. The desert wind slapped the Riad walls, rattled the wooden shutters like a warning. But she followed him. They left Marrakesh without a word. The city's lanterns and music and laughter melted behind them in seconds, replaced by the deep hush of night and an ocean of sand. The cruiser rolled smoothly over dunes under a sky thick with stars so vivid it was as if the heavens had pressed themselves close to earth, wanting to see what walked beneath them. Samira kept watching Kato's face, pale in the moonlight, still, emotionless, as though waiting for him to breath, to show fear, or longing or regret. But he remained unchanged, like one who has walked beyond human time. Hours stretched, measured only by the shifting of dunes and the distant sigh of wind across sand dunes so vast they erased the world as she knew it. Then, soft but absolute, Kato's voice cut the silence. "You saw my wings." It wasn't a question, it was an assertion. Samira closed her eyes and nodded, the truth sobering her blood. "Yes." He exhaled slowly, "There are things I must show you before the dunes change shape again." Her pulse jumped. "What dunes?" she whispered. "The ones that sleep beneath the surface," he answered. The words fell like cold stones into her stomach. "What does that mean?" she asked, though part of her already knew. He didn't answer, only kept driving deeper into the dark. Eventually they stopped at the foot of a dune so massive and silent it seemed carved from the bones of the world. It rose like a mountain of dust and memory, its crest lost in darkness. Kato stepped out first, robes stirring with the breeze, and stood motionless, as the wind gathered around him like smoke. Samira followed, each step sending warm sand slipping beneath her sandals. The air felt electric, the kind of charged stillness that hums beneath old magic. Kato lifted a bronze staff, ancient runes glowing softly along its length as though waking from slumber. The dune shivered, then the sand began to pull away from its center, not crumbling or collapsing, but parting like heavy curtains drawn aside by invisible hands. Slowly, deliberately, a glowing map formed on the desert floor, lines of light weaving across the dunes, valleys and ridges, rivers long vanished, pathways etched by time itself, glowing like veins of a living being. Samira stared, breath caught in her throat. She recognized the shapes, some names whispered by storytellers. Some places only sung of in old songs, but this map was alive. It pulsed softly beneath her gaze, rising and falling like a chest breathing. Kato traced with a finger a symbol at the center, a spiral enclosed in concentric rings that pulsed with threatening calm. "This is the gate," he murmured, "the oldest one. The mouth of forgotten things." Samira stumbled back as if struck. Why are you taking me there? Her voice cracked under terror and wonder. He turned slowly, face unreadable in the starlight. Because you carry the other half of the key. Her heart thundered. She opened her mouth to protest, to demand meaning, but no sound came. The desert wind answered instead, whispering sand across her skin. Then the earth beneath them trembled, softly at first, then growing, as though waking from centuries-long sleep. Light rose from the sand in gentle ripples, shapes formed of dust and shimmer, floating like spirits born of memory and heat, moving in slow, hushed orbits around Samira. Their glow was faint, ancient. They circled her, whispering without words. Kato lowered his staff and spoke quietly, "They recognize you." Terror coiled in her ribs. "No, no, they don't. I'm nobody." His gaze locked on hers, softer now, but deeper than she had ever feared. "You are a descendant of the first Watcher, she who saw beyond the dunes, who bound the gate with her own breath. Every few generations, one of her bloodline births truth." The spirits moved faster, dust lifting into spiraling halos around her ankles. Her knees threatened to give out. She shook her head. "I don't want this." Her voice was small. The desert wind answered, stirring the sand. Kato stepped closer, his voice gentle but inexorable. "Destiny is never asked for. It simply arrives." The map beneath her feet shimmering, then disintegrating into motes of light that vanished with the wind, leaving only smooth sand behind. A low rumble shook the dune, then it collapsed inward, not crumbling but folding as though the earth flexed under some great weight. Sand slid away like water pulled from a shore to reveal stone. Massive stone. A colossal wall rose where there had been only desert, carved by hands lost to time, vast wings spread across stone, eyes that seemed to watch even in darkness, intricate symbols of storms and gates and ancient kings' long dust. Samira stepped forward, compelled by a terror and fascination tangled so tightly she could not tell which was stronger, and ran her fingers over one carving, a symbol of a coiled serpent bounding into light. The moment her skin touched the stone, the wall pulsed, a wave of heat racing through her bones. She jerked back, gasping. The stone glowed where she had touched. The glow spread across carved wings, sweeping across the entire wall until a massive circular seal appeared, engraved with spiraling signs and ancient script, the circle glowing like molten ice in the moonlight. The entire desert seemed to hum in response. Kato exhaled slowly, "It is awakening." Samira whispered through trembling lips, "What is behind it?" He didn't answer for a long moment, the only sound the wind shifting over sand, the distant cry of unseen creatures, the stones whispering in their ancient tongue. Finally he said, softly, "Everything the desert swallowed." A shiver crawled up her spine. Before she could react, a voice, trembling, raspy, ancient, echoed through the dunes. The voice of the old woman from the market, yet carried on wind and memory and time. "Child, run." Samira's head snapped around. No one was there. Only endless night. The voice came again, closer. "Some gates are not meant to be opened." The warning struck her chest like a blade. Fear blossomed, fierce and scorching. She looked at Kato, panic in her eyes. He raised the staff. "Enough," he commanded. The wind ceased. The desert silenced, as if holding its breath. Samira stepped back, voice shaking. You silenced her." Kato's face was unreadable in wavering. Starlight, calm, severe. "She would have misled you," he said. "She does not understand what wakes beneath these dunes." "And you do?" she asked, terror sharpening every syllable. He met her gaze, and for a moment she saw sorrow deeper than any ocean. "I am bound to it." The ground under their feet vibrated again. The circular seal on the wall began to rotate slowly, symbols shifting like living script reshaping itself in the glow. Kato's wings unfurled behind him, half-formed, feathers flickering between solidity and shadow. "Samira," he said, voice low but clear, "the gate cannot open without you. Your presence awakens its second seal." Samira felt bile rise. Her mind spun. She shook her head, stumbling backwards. "I didn't choose this." The words came hollow but fierce. Kato stepped towards her, each movement measured, slow, as if time itself bent around him. "You were chosen long before you were born." Anguish cracked in her heart. "That's not fair," she spat, voice raw, echoing against stone and sand and memory. He looked at her, soft sadness in his glowing eyes. "It is not about fairness. It is about balance. If the gate remains sealed, the desert will rise and swallow cities. If it opens, what is inside may never return to sleep." The words hung heavy in the air as the wind rose again, swirling dust in spirals that danced between fear and promise. Samira's breath came in ragged bursts. She stared at the seal, the glowing runes, the threshold between worlds. "So what do you want me to do?" she asked, voice barely a whisper. Kato stepped closer, his wings half unfurled behind him, casting shifting shadows across the dunes. "I want you to decide." The desert wind stilled. The stones trembled again. And Samira stood before the glowing wall, the sand at her feet swirling in ghost lights, shoulders trembling under the weight of destiny, heart pounding with fear, anger, confusion, longing, and something else she could not name, a deep, ancient pull. Behind her, Kato stood as sentinel, wings flickering between forms, silent, unreadable. The symbols glowed brighter and pulsed rhythmically, as if the gate itself drew breath, waiting, hungry, patient. Two paths stretched before her in the faint moonlight. One led through the threshold to truth, to danger, to power. The other led away, to ignorance, to safety, to the ordinary life she once knew. Her mind reeled. Emotions clashed inside her like storm wind and desert flame. The weight of generations pressed on her, a heritage she had never asked for, yet could never ignore. A single heartbeat, but it felt like centuries. And the desert watched. The dunes held their breath. Under the eternal sky, Samira understood, there was no turning back. The world she knew was already gone. The desert had claimed her choice before she even spoke it. And as the glow from the gate deepened, swallowing sand and shadow and light, the fate of what was, what is, and what might become held its breath, waiting for her decision.